morning, depending on time zone. My name is Chelsea. I'm here with Sheneika. We're going to give everybody maybe like 2, 3 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and get started. We are going to record the webinar today. So for anyone that trickles in later, they can come back and watch this again. They can get a little bit more insight on opening and framing, but we're excited to have everyone. If anybody is especially excited and has energy today, feel free to jump into the chat and tell us where you're located, what type of program you run. If you have any particular questions today, I will again give us some framing in a moment, but if anybody wants to just say hello, feel free to do so down in the chat. Ooh, it's so quiet. I know we're going to have so much energy in like 2 seconds because I know how Sheneika and I both are, and I love it. Sheneika, I'm going to ask you to come off mute. Your morning so far. Hello from Ohio. Hi, I'm in Indiana.
My morning so
Yeah.
far has been really good, pretty smooth and peaceful, and I love a good smooth morning. I ate breakfast today, so it's like, what? You had time for breakfast? But yeah, small things. So yeah.
Nice. And I forget, are you also in Indiana?
No, I am based out of North Carolina. I've
Okay.
just been working with Indiana for a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm jumping into some of the questions, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. We have someone else in the chat who is from Chicago. Hello, Maria. All right. So I am.
Hello.
Oh, well, hello.
Hi, Maria.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. We're glad you're here. All right. I do think I'm going to go ahead and get us started for the sake of time because I know I kind of have said this a couple of times, but Sheneika and I just bring some energy. So we're going to have a real good time today. And I want to be able to have conversation and fun with the group as a whole. So hello to everyone. My name is Chelsea Andrews. I am the head of engagement and partnerships at Afterschool HQ. I'm going to share just a little bit about our company here to get us started, and then I'll shift the rest of the time entirely over to Sheneika, but just so that everyone knows who brought the room together, because not everyone here is a client of ours. We may have come in and contacted with you in lots of different ways. So we are an education technology tool specifically for people who do after school, out of school time, summer programming. And something that we realized with our co-founders coming from this industry, growing up in after school programming themselves, is that the providers in this industry are asked to do way too much with too little. Not everyone gets into offering programming for children with an entire MBA background or knowing how to do the really, really heavy administrative back end or the fundraising or the grants and all of that. So we have this tool to help support after school providers. There's kind of 3 big things that we like to lead with in framing who we are and what we do. We created a system that can help parents and their children communicate with the providers in a much more smooth way. We have text messages, emails, registrations, payments, this whole kind of landing platform to be able to facilitate your entire program. We also want to make sure that your tool running the program has one centralized location to be able to track your metrics, to be able to do impact reporting, all of that, which goes into the last thing. We want you to be able to tell your story about the amazing work that you're doing to funders and donors. So we want to make sure that your reporting and impact is made very smooth. So at the end, we will give some links here in the webinar for being able to get in contact with us and learn more about us. But that's Afterschool HQ. And again, my name is Chelsea, and I'm here with Sheneika. Hello, hello. So a shift here. I'm going to give a little bit of a bio framing on her. I have a list of questions that are mapped out for us already, but of course, feel free to put questions over in the chat. I'll get to those after I read the bio to see if we have any leading questions we want to focus on or a kind of open framing with. And then at the end, we will open to questions more verbally, but we will just to get through the initial questions, keep things over into the chat just to kind of move us along. So Sheneika, usually what I can do with bios is read them and then give like a comprehensive summary without looking at notes. You've done a lot of different things. So my eyes are going to be going over here because I don't want to miss some of this. So forgive me there, but you are the founder and principal consultant at Simmons Leadership Services. The conversation today is some things that we're going to talk about in some areas that you are an expert in. Our grants, strategic planning, diversity and cultural competency, family engagement, advocacy, relationship building, and more. For the room here, a lot of the questions that I have pre-prepared are focusing on grant writing, diversity within the out-of-school time space, and then entrepreneurship. So if anybody has questions in a different area that they would like us to lean into, please put those in the chat. I know there's so much more that Sheneika can speak to. You also, Sheneika, were a former educator. Maybe we can learn a little bit more about that in a moment. And you're passionate about shaping a more equitable after school and educational landscape nationally, which I think is very cool because you're in several different states. Like you have a really, really interesting perspective at multiple levels. And I think that's worth noting. You've also worked with different demographics, meaning youth, families, schools, communities, and organizations. So as a provider, as an educator, there's so many different realms and of different people you've interacted with. And I'll kind of close us out here with maybe two things. There's a short list of some different groups that you've worked with that I think is worth mentioning. And then you also have some services that I said that I wanted to plug too, so we'll do that. You have provided professional development workshops to several different organizations, including the North Carolina North Carolina Center for After School Programs, the North Carolina Association of Biomedical Research, Miss Smart Ma'am, the National Afterschool Association, and the Indiana Afterschool Network. So there's so much more here, but I just need a pause. Do you want to say hello, respond to any of that?
Yes. First off, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. I really do appreciate you guys coming and spending time to like hear my story and my experiences and some of the things that I've been able to see through my work, both professionally and personally. So I appreciate you all for coming. Yes, so the North Carolina Biomedical, it's just a STEM conference, y'all. I like to keep it simple. So I'm not like I'm not like this person that's not relatable or reachable. It's a STEM conference, and I am really glad that I've been able to be a part of so many different diverse groups. But yeah, it's been a journey. It's still more to come. So yeah.
And you have your own consulting agency now, yeah?
Yes. Well, should I just start talking?
Yeah, you can just, girl, we have some questions to guide us, but we will jump all over the place. But if people want to
Okay.
learn more about you and what you can do, like where can they find you? What can you offer?
Yeah, so I started my consulting in 2022. I realized when I was working with the North Carolina Center for Afterschool Programs, which is the statewide after-school network for North Carolina, I was writing grants and I was good at it. And I was doing PD and I was good at it, or professional development. And I was like, there's an area here. There's a gap here I'm noticing between programs, between getting free or budget-friendly services. And so I sat down with my boss and we had a long conversation. And I was like, is this feasible? Like, is this a conflict of interest? Like all those questions that we don't typically think of. I sat down with her and she was like, do what you need to do that's best for you. And so I started the business not knowing really where I was gonna like find my footing and how I was gonna get clients, how I was gonna engage with people. And she just kept saying, do what you do. And so that's what I did. I actually then from there, like in having conversations with my support system and all that good stuff, I was able to just meet people organically and find clients that way. And so Simmons Leadership Services writes grants. We do research for grants, all that good stuff. And then we also provide professional development, technical assistance in your programs. Sometimes I just meet with programs and learn about what they're doing. And then I just like throw out a couple suggestions and just say like, maybe I'm not the person, but maybe I am the person for you. But here's something that you can leverage based on what you said to me. So sometimes it's just a conversation with people. So other times it's a, hey, you owe me some money for this conversation. But a lot of times we're just engaging in conversation to see what needs are and then moving from there. So yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Anna, on my team, can I have you drop our Facebook link in the chat? As we go throughout the conversation, if anybody wants to connect more with Sheneika, Her and I have talked offline, but there is actually a grant writer that Afterschool HQ is working with. So we have some special rates and kind of services that we can help you with. If you want to ask questions about that, we can jump into our Facebook group to connect more. But there's so much more that Sheneika can do for you too. And I want everyone to feel comfortable to reach out to her directly also, because she's a leader in this space and we want to support her in her work. But we're also able to have her here today speaking about several other things. So she's not only here in like a grant writer capacity today, she's here as an individual, as a professional, as a leader. I would even say in like a thought leader, and I don't mean that in like a buzzwordy sense. Like I've really been able to hear some bits of your background, and I think you're just a really powerful woman, and I mean that in like the most complimentary and respectful way. Yeah. Okay, so if we can maybe zoom out a little bit more, zoom back rather. When did you get into the out of school, after school space? Was that as an adult? Was that as a child? What did that look like for you?
For me, after school has been a part of my life, like since, I don't know, probably since birth, really. So when I was a kid, my mom actually worked for the school. She was a bus driver and a lunch lady at one time. And she would leave before we were waking, like we had to wake ourselves up. And then by the time she got home in the evening, it was after we had already got home. So like we were responsible kids, like we could hang out in the house if we wanted to, but in our neighborhood, and I'm from Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. And if any of you guys know about downtown Norfolk and what that environment is like, I am from Calvert Square, and if you know where I'm talking about, if you don't, it's okay. You can Google it, but it's a low income housing neighborhood. And so in the middle of that, they had a Boys and Girls Club, and we called it the Center. And so we would spend our evenings or sometimes our weekends at the center, just hanging out. At the time, and this might date me a little bit. If you know, you know. We had a computer lab, y'all. Like we had a computer lab, and we didn't have a computer at home, and so they had the computer lab and internet at the same time. What, you didn't have like one of those dial-up CDs? Like, so we would go there, hang out, do our homework. They provided snacks after school. And so I didn't really know what that program meant until I got older and I started thinking about like, well, what do kids need? So then when I went to college and stuff like that, they helped me with my financial aid. They helped me write papers, all that kind of stuff. And so the after school program started when I was a kid. And then once I got into education and I started teaching and I started to see a gap in my students, I was like, they need more than just what's happening during the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 every day. They need more. Like, and I was in rural North Carolina. So for background, I did Teach for America. And I got placed in rural North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina specifically. And there I was placed in a school, in a middle school that was a food desert. It's a medical desert, so there's no actual hospitals. The county is 80 miles wide. There's no major grocery stores. There's only gas stations, and they have insane crime rates. And then there's these pockets of communities. And so where I taught, I had like a mix of students, like the students would be on a 2-hour bus ride to get to school. And so like if you're anywhere rural, then you know, like they go door to door and the kids are getting on a bus at 4 o'clock in the morning just to get to school, right? Or it's 5 o'clock in the morning just to get to school. And so we would start to see like kids, and at middle school is a crucial time for them. So they're developing as people, they're developing as learners. And if someone dropped the ball in first grade, we're going to see the impacts of that by the time they get to 6th grade. And so I was seeing that my students needed something more, and we got the opportunity through grant funding to be able to provide them with a STEM PBL after school program, which is project-based learning. STEM is a buzzword, so I know we all know what that means. I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence. But yeah, so I was a site director or site coordinator for that program. And we did tons of stuff. And y'all, I did not, back then it was 2015. I had no clue about what STEM was. I was a psych major, y'all. I had no clue. Not a clue what PBL was. I also taught social studies, so things were a little different for me. And so they threw me in this role at 22 years old. I think I was 21 or 22. And my students were taller than me, and I realized like they need this. So I was showing up to work every day and then staying till 6 every day, just to make sure that they had out of school time programming. And so that showed me that like they need this, they loved it. Some of the kids that wouldn't even participate in my class would show up to the after school program and be like, Miss Simmons, you know I had to come see you. You know I had to come hang with y'all. I like being here. And I'm like, yo, I need you to do my social studies work. You know what I mean? Like, but it's one of those things where after school, I've seen what it can do for a kid. I think it helped shift my trajectory, and I've seen how it can be beneficial for them. I've seen how it can really change their life. And the people that run those programs are dedicated, and they come from all walks of life, and they impact so many kids at one time. And kids, and a lot of times our kids don't even know they're being impacted. I didn't know Mr. Taylor was impacting me every single day I walked into that computer lab to literally play games. I just want to play games. So yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. But after school and out of school time has just been such a core part of my being and like what I do with my life and being in community work. Yeah, so
It's not rambling at all. You're sharing your heart with us, and I love it. And I asked you to. Okay. So then I know about you. I don't think that we've said this yet, but you are in a PhD program right now, right?
I
We're kind of still
am.
in this like holistic who is Sheneika place.
Yes.
So what are you doing right now?
So outside of the business, I work for, in my day job, I work for WakeEd Partnership, which is a local nonprofit, education nonprofit here in North Carolina. We serve the largest school district in North Carolina. We provide various services for teachers as well as students. And I oversee some of our core programming, like our free teacher store. So we provide free supplies to teachers. Some of our events, we have one coming up called Ed Talks, where we've spotlighted 5 wonderful teachers to come and tell their stories and how they're going to reimagine education. I run our scholarship program. I do a lot, and amongst other things at WakeEd. And then in my at-home time, besides Simmons Leadership Services, I am working on my PhD in Human and Social Services at Walden University. And through that, y'all pray for me. When you guys get a chance, pray for me. I start my prospectus literally on Monday and dissertation hopefully in the summer. So keep me in your prayers because there's still things that need to get done. Obviously, life doesn't stop because you start a PhD. It doesn't stop. Stop doing anything. So just keep me in your prayers. And because of that, I also I have hobbies, y'all. I'm not just like all work and no play. I like to cruise, y'all. Cruising, boozing, and snoozing. Top tier. It is top tier. It's one of the wonderful ways that I spend my time, like socially. I like to, I'm a video gamer, so I play video games when I have time. So if you're a gamer at all, let's chat, because I don't mind talking about video games and my thoughts on certain games. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do outside of that, outside of like hanging with my sister. I have a twin sister. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, we did have a lot of people kind of trickle in throughout getting to know you the last couple minutes. So just a quick recap for the room. This entire webinar is being recorded, so it will be redistributed out to everyone who is here. I have a list of questions that we're talking to Sheneika about, and then we're going to open at the end for verbal questions. But if anybody has anything that they want to ask as we are just chatting together, please feel free to do that over in the side. Main topics that I'm asking Sheneika about are grant writing, diversity within the out of school time space, and then also entrepreneurship. So there's kind of a quick background there. We also have a Facebook group that is a great community where we share resources for providers all over the country. So Anna on our team can drop that in the chat, but this will be redistributed out. So then my next question for you, Sheneika, is this is kind of orienting us into who you are and what you choose to put your time into. Now, I know we heard about your PhD program and your hobbies a little bit, but you are choosing, even with this higher education like trajectory for yourself, you're choosing to stay in the OST space, out of school time space. So do you have hopes for this space? Is there like what's making you want to keep doing this, and what fires you up?
So I think what fires me up is like, obviously, like I said before, my personal experience in it, and then seeing what happens in the classroom and where the supports are truly needed, but also knowing, that many out-of-school time providers come from all walks of life, all different backgrounds. I've met some out-of-school time providers that only have a 6th grade education, but they're passionate about this work, right? And they're passionate about providing students with the things that they need. And so I feel like a lot of times they get into a space where they're saying like, I can't do it, or I don't have the skills because I don't have a bachelor's degree, or I don't have a high school diploma, so I'm not really sure if I'm capable of doing it. And I think sometimes they need a push. And they're in a field that is not always recognized as valuable. They're in a field that is oftentimes like not thought about when we think about education. We typically, when you say education, you think about the people that are in the classrooms, which is not, I'm not trying to overshadow that, because that is valuable work, obviously, but also that there are these people in the communities that really, really know the students, that are really making life-changing, that are changing students' lives too. And so I think the reason why I keep doing it and I keep giving is because I feel like they need it. Honestly, there's a gap there, and they sometimes they just need somebody to tell them they're on the right track. And I know it looks daunting. I know this looks like it's a lot, because sometimes the walls are falling on us, or like you're building a boat and rowing it at the same time. And when you're in the mess, you don't even know if you're doing it well, if you're doing it great. And sometimes we second guess ourselves. And I definitely want to be one of the people that help champion out of school time. I've sat in plenty of advocacy meetings where we're just talking about why it's valuable and where people are telling their stories. And so if you're somebody that doesn't think you're confident, don't think you're competent enough to do something, you very much so are. And our students are looking towards you as the answer, even when we don't have the answers. And it's okay to tell them like, hey, I don't have the answer for this, but let me get back with you. And so I also play that role for them. Sometimes it's like, I don't have the answer, but maybe I can point you in the direction of someone that does. Or like, maybe the conversation isn't about having an answer. Maybe it's just about venting and being a listening ear. And so I just feel like the out of school time space needs to be uplifted. I feel like the program providers, they remind me of my aunts, my uncles. Like literally, I meet with people and I'm like, you my new cousin. Like, welcome to the family. I think that it's just, this is valuable work that you're doing. This is heart work, and it's also hard work. And so, yeah, I'm rambling again, but I just feel like
Again,
those
you're
are
sharing
needed.
your heart. I love it so much. I kind of want to shift us over. I have some other questions, but I want to shift us a little bit more into grant writing. This is usually a topic that is immediate questions from a lot of the providers who connect with us. So can you tell us about the first grant that you applied for yourself? Like, what did that feel like? Was it scary? What did you do?
It was terrifying. So for context, when I joined the North Carolina Network, as their program manager, I was fresh out the classroom. Like, I was still telling people that like, hey, I'll be right back. I have to go use the bathroom, because I was so used to like having to tell somebody when you have to go to the bathroom. So I was unlearning habits and stuff that was happening in the classroom now that I was no longer a part of it. And so my first week at work, she gives me this paper and says, this is a grant due, you're gonna write it. And I was like, me? I'm gonna write it? What? Like, come on. Sometimes I was barely writing lesson plans, right? Like, so I'm gonna write this grant that we have the possibility of losing. So I did all this research, I did all this stuff, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And a day before the grant was due, my boss sat down with me and was like, so what did you get? And I was like, okay, this is all I got. And it's a bunch of papers and all that stuff. And she was like, yeah, so that's not it. And so it's like, so we sat down, like I stayed to work till 8 o'clock. We ordered pizza and we wrote that grant. And I realized in that moment, like, wait a second, I overthought this. I thought this was something different. I thought we had to provide all this research and all this data, but really it's just telling the story of our organization and why we need this, obviously why we need the money and what we're going to spend the money on. And so from then on, I was writing grants for NCCAP onward. Any grant that had to do with my work directly, STEM, SEL, career, all of that stuff, that's what I was doing. I was writing the grants. And so that's my first grant. And it's kind of like, when I look back on it, I was like, girl, you overreacted. But yeah.
Okay. Relatable, I feel like. Do you feel like it sounds like you've written many grants since then? Do you feel like there is particular like demographic data? Do you look at census? Like, is there any particular things that you think numbers, this is something that everyone should include or at least look towards including?
So if you don't do it, check out the Afterschool Alliance America After 3 p.m. report. They've compiled a ton of data for your state. So if you're based in Indiana, they've already compiled the data for you. And they talk about why the need for after-school programs is so high. They talk about the return on investment for after-school. Yes, I will put that in the chat, Rebecca. So the America After 3 p.m. report, they do it about every 4 or 5 years, I believe. But it's a really thorough report. They look at rural, they look at STEM, I believe summer programs. And so that's a great piece of data to use. I don't know if you guys know about the Indiana Kids Count data. I don't know if After School HQ shared that. I can also put that in the chat. It's so when I've written grants for Indiana, for Indiana-based programs, I use that. I look at school data. So you want to know what your kids are, how your kids are performing in reading and math. Those are the two big ones. Science, yes, you can also leverage that data, but I typically look at reading and math because if my students can't read, they can't do science. Like, or you know what I mean? Like they can't do the other things that we need them to do. And so the first thing is looking at their literacy scores. How are they compared to the state? How are they compared to the next county over? Looking at your district scores. And so I mean, there's tons of data. I also use census data when necessary. Your local juvenile, give me a second, I have to get it. Your local police stations also collect data on juvenile crime. You can leverage that data if you're talking about your kids, and let's say you have a sports program and you're talking about how this reduces at-risk behaviors in students. You want to leverage that juvenile data, that juvenile crime data. There's another one. Sorry, now I'm like, what is it? So
We're jumping around lots of different topics.
yeah, so it just really depends on what your program is looking for, but I always say reading math scores, the America After 3 p.m., those are awesome data sources. Save the Children did a report called The Land of Inopportunity, where they talk about during COVID, who was impacted the most and what communities were impacted the most. If you have any data on graduation rates, all that stuff helps. It's really, and I know data like is frightening at times because we look at it like all these numbers, all this information, but like if you can find, like, let's say you're doing STEM programming and you find data on science and math and reading, right? Use that to tell your story of your organization. Use that to say like, okay, the reason why we exist is because 76% of students in our community are not reading on grade level. And this is why we need this STEM program, because we're gonna intertwine literacy and all that stuff. And so I think data is super duper valuable. So if you're writing grants and you're not putting data, or you are acquiring your own data, that's okay if you're acquiring your own data. But if you're looking for another resource, I just thought about it. That's why I'm saying it like this. But y'all, there's this website called Problem-Attic, ATTIC, and I'll put it in the chat. And Problematic allows you to look at different end of grade testing questions. So like in North Carolina, we have something called EOGs. And so we can look at North Carolina's previous EOG questions, and you can build tests for your students. And so if your program is looking at standard-based learning, you're trying to align with what the schools are doing, go look at Problematic. They've already done the identifying the test questions for you. So yeah, I'm sorry. And Maria, I am not familiar with the Springboard Foundation. I'm sorry. I'm also looking at the chat box. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So
Yes,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Maria. Was she? I heard her say Maria, or she was just reading the chat.
Yes, I was just answering your question about the Springboard Foundation. I am not familiar with it.
Okay. Okay. They are an organization. They support nonprofits that have after school programs and go into the school. So I was just curious because they have invited me to apply for a grant. That's what I'm doing now. And I heard you mention something about, I think you mentioned the Indiana Youth Institute. Did you?
Yes, that's who does the
Yes.
Indiana Kids Count data. Sorry.
Yes, they do, and they are wonderful. I'm actually in Illinois, and they helped me with a with something to help build a program because they get grants from the federal government, the juvenile delinquency and something department. And I'm just saddened that they don't have an Illinois um, counterpart, but supposedly there is someone that's building it here in Illinois, like Indiana.
And Maria, you might want to check out the After School Alliance page because they have
Okay.
who your statewide network is. And the National After School Association also lists who your statewide after school network is. So as you're writing those grants, you should be able to tap them and say like, hey, do you guys have any data on or can point me in the direction of insert whatever data you're looking for.
Got
So don't, I believe it's somewhere on the After School Alliances page and they'll tell you exactly who to contact or at least have a website up so that you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking for data on X, Y, and Z. And they
Mhm.
might be able to tell you if there is an Illinois counterpart to Indiana's Youth Institute. But thank you.
Thank you.
Anna, can you
And-
actually go grab, we'll have her grab that link for you. Can you look up the After School Alliance? They have a national map, and then people can go and find their state and click their state, and it can connect them to their state affiliates. So she'll grab that link for us. We did have another
Yay.
question in the chat too, Sheneika. I don't know if you saw that from Rebecca.
Yeah, so I think it'll depend on, in terms of the data that you need to collect, I think it'll depend on what you're writing about and then how much space you have in the grant. So some grants, they'll say you have a 1,000 word count. So you can't be like super duper detailed and granular. So find those key points that'll help you tell the story. If you're talking about literacy, know what the literacy rates are, know what the impact is on kids and families. Are families incurring the same issue? Like, is it intergenerational? If mom can't read, is the child struggling to read? You know, you see what I'm saying? Like, you just need to know what, I guess, just how to tell your story and know what key points are important. So I can't tell you like, you need 5 facts. It's really just, it depends on what you're writing about and what makes sense for the grant.
LaShonda said, when I thought of grant writing, I envisioned a book of data like Moby Dick. Talk about overthinking it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you don't need a book. You just you could probably just use like, I mean, if you always like, there are certain data places that or sites that I go to all the time to find data that are free because number one, I don't want to spend money that I don't have. And so I typically like the After School Alliance, I'm always leveraging their data because they also update that, right? And they're always putting out a new report, a new thing. Your statewide after school network, they're going to be able to tell you like, hey, we also did this report and we partnered with Qualtrics and did this. So I think just leveraging existing resources so that you're not working so hard, because to me, after you write a couple of grants and you know what the data is and all you gotta do is update it. It's just an update and making it fit into the grant narrative. But yeah, not a book. Please don't ever do a book of data. You'll stress yourself out. Another good one is the Wallace Foundation too. They do a lot of reports on after school programming. So yeah, I'll find that link too.
Thank you. I am curious, as you're doing that, I'll go slowly so can do 2 things at once.
Mhm.
This is going a little bit more niche, but in some silent conversations you and I were talking about like applying for and receiving future funding, and you talked about asking partners for letters of support. Can you say more about that? Maybe
Yeah.
someone isn't even sure what a letter of support is.
So a letter of support just outlines how they'll partner with you or how they support you and what they hope the relationship would do. So like typically I give people a template of this because I'm like, some partners don't even know what to write in the letter of support. So I usually just say like, what's your name, what does your organization do, and how the partnership exists, and then like their hope for the future. Like, we hope to continue to partner with so and so. I'm just going to say Afterschool HQ. We hope to continue to partner with Afterschool HQ for the foreseeable future, because we really enjoy their programs like that. And so it's a formal letter. I usually tell people to update these as the partnerships change or as they continue to grow. So depending on the grants, because some grants want an updated letter of support. So I usually ask people, like, once a fiscal year, can you just provide us with a letter of support so that we can use in our grants? And then ask them if they need to change the date, change the name of the grant. You want to make sure they're personalized so that it says, like, you're applying for the Springboard Foundation's grant and I support their endeavors, da, 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 da. So letters of support are vital because they just show that your partners believe in your work. So if you're partnered with your local school district right now today, ask them for a letter of support, because they are going to be one of your biggest champions. So think of those partners that you have really, really good relationships with, that you want to continue to grow and nurture. So even if you guys aren't receiving money and it's just literally an exchange of kids, like, so your kids are going to this feeder school, you know this, ask them to write a letter of support. They come to all your programs. Just ask them to write a letter. And provide them with the template, right? Like, hey, I would love for you to say this, or can you speak more to our STEM program, because that's where you guys are directly related. So I just think it's a great way for your partners to uplift you and to continue to support you, even in your grant writing.
Amazing. I'll take a kind of a pause here for a beat if anybody has any kind of residual questions on grant writing. I want to switch us over to talk about diversity a bit within the out of school time space. But I will pause just a moment to see if anybody wants to
quick
drop any last
question.
questions in the chat. Oh, yeah, you have one?
Hey, yeah, quick question. So what if you have a pending relationship with a potential partner who you're writing a grant with? And so you have, established partners, but you're wanting to do a project and, you have a pending relationship. How do you go about letter writing if you're not actively doing it with a previous partner, but you don't necessarily have work completed with your pending partner, if that makes sense?
So if you're writing a grant with, let's say, the Boys and Girls Club, and you guys need a letter of support, I wouldn't use the Boys and Girls Club as a letter of support, because you're literally writing it with them and the relationship doesn't exist. The letter of support will just come from, let's say you have a different organization that partnered with you for something else, you can leverage them and have them speak towards the partnership. And then ask them to do the same thing. So now everybody's bringing a letter to the table to show, like, we have a memorandum of understanding, which is like a contract that talks about each role. And we have these awesome partners that we partnered with previously, and these partners will be able to speak towards our engagement and what we do in our community. But if you're co-writing a grant and you guys are gonna divide funds or whatever that case is, I would just get an MOU in place so that everyone knows what their role is. And that can be a simple contract just stating that, Organization A is going to provide students, recommend programming, and do our assessments. And Organization B, which is whoever is going to do X, Y, and Z. But I don't think you'll be like, if you want to get a letter of support from them, just if they're not directly writing the grant, I would just ask them to speak towards a future relationship and why they decided to partner with you on this. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thanks.
Good to see you, Crystal. I realized who you were asking the question after you asked it, so hi.
Hey, girl, good to see you too.
Okay. Shifting us over then into diversity, very broad topic, but I know you're very passionate about this. So, if you see any, I don't want to call it a rabbit hole, but like niches of our conversation, please feel free to run down it, because I'm sure that there's elements to this that I don't even know to like poke or ask about. But kind of my broad opening question is, because you grew up in this space as well, do you feel like as a whole, as like a national community, as like a conversation, diversity within this industry has evolved over time, or what has the evolution looked like or felt like to you?
I definitely think it has evolved. So in my opinion, the out of school time programs are in a very unique space where they are able to, they have a lot more flexibility. Like, they're not worried, like, they don't have not many, I'll say this, they don't have to worry about the legalities or meeting a student's IEP or anything like that. And so they have this, they're not worried about end of year testing. They have this flexibility where they can really build out programs that are catered to every single student. On the flip side of that, and speaking of IEPs, which is an individualized education plan that some students have, or a behavioral plan that students have, we find that out of school time programs, at least in North Carolina, that are not connected to a school, they face issues meeting that need for students that may have disabilities. Whether they can get access to the IEP plan, whether they like parents don't tell them that their student has an IEP, so now they're struggling to help serve them. I think when we talk about diversity and thinking about students that are disabled, how after school programs still have a lot of room for growth. And part of that is because they don't have formal training, right? And that's where organizations like Afterschool HQ come in, where we're able to help. And I'm saying we as if I work for you all, but I do not.
We're in
But
community with each other. We hang out. We're sharing a space.
but Afterschool HQ and other organizations can help train and help kind of meet those diverse needs of students. And I think because after school is in such a flexible or a flex space, they're able to really take time out and make sure every student is able to gain access and learn in their own unique way. So DEI has come a long way, because I mean, when I was in the after school program, like, it was like, no, this is way I learned how to do it. You're gonna do this math of 2 plus 2, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that. But it has come a long, long way.
Okay.
Still ways to go, but a long way.
Yeah. Do you feel like there is anything worth mentioning within like a DEI lens to the like grantee and awardee dynamic that can exist in like this nonprofit area? Does
I would
that
say, based on my experience, when I first started writing grants and looking at grants and reviewing grants, I found that they weren't really talking about DEI much, right? It was kind of this thing that was like in the air, like it was there, it lived in that space, but it wasn't really talked about much. And
Yeah.
now in my reviewing, like the last year, maybe the last year or two, we found that a lot of grants are asking about how are you meeting the diverse needs, or how are you supporting DEI within your program? And I think that's wonderful, because it's asking you to think about, not just have a statement, right? Not just have like, we have this diversity statement that lives on our website that we didn't really read, you know, like.
Yeah.
And so now it's asking you to put it in action in your programs. And so I think in that grantee and grantor relationship, they are starting to like just keep an eye out for like, how are they meeting diverse needs? And they're looking at demographics of your board too, right? They don't, like, if you have if this is your board, I'm sorry. But if
No.
your board is made up of all old white men, right? They're looking at it like, how are these the decision makers, right? And especially if you're in a neighborhood where you're serving mostly minorities or mostly underprivileged youth, and they don't all look like them, it's kind of like, huh. So now they're starting to ask, what's your board makeup, right? Why are these people essential to your board? How are they shifting the narrative of your board and of your organization? And so I think this DEI is just really getting pushed to the forefront, especially when we're talking about writing grants and we're looking at demographics of the youth you serve, looking at if you can provide the socioeconomic status of the youth that you serve. We're looking at Title I schools that are in your community that you serve. Like, so they're starting to look at, how are you really meeting the needs, and are you in a space where your organization say that you're doing it, but you're talking the talk, not really walking the walk kind of vibe.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm curious, you as a speaker who's asked to be like a panelist and a presenter, do you have like several different topics that you like to bring to the table? Like I know youth voice. I was gonna ask you to speak more about youth voice, but like are there certain topics in this space that you like to speak to more or less? And also can you just say a little bit about youth voice? Because I feel like that was something that you were passionate about.
Yeah, so I first I love to speak, because can y'all tell I'm a talker? But I love to get up in front of people, and I love doing PD on STEM. Specifically, it's one of my favorites because it allows me to be hands-on and not just like all this bottled up energy that I have, like y'all, this is not even the half of it, but all this energy that I have, we're now putting it in STEM, and we're getting our hands dirty, and we're able to build stuff and be creative, and I'm able to tell really bad dad jokes. Let me know if you guys want to hear dad jokes. But you know, I really love STEM. I love speaking towards engaging youth, and just how we do our work, and thinking outside the box with that. Yeah, I mean, it just really depends. I'm passionate about a lot of things. And so it's like, I love talking about like why we are valuable, and like inspiring people and empowering people to do great work. So yeah. And in terms of youth voice, I was somebody that when I first got into the classroom, I thought youth voice meant like, oh, my kids are able to talk, and like literally, I think they can talk in my class, or they can encourage each other. I got a shout out board. They know exactly what, like they feel encouraged by each other. And what I found was that they didn't really feel encouraged by each other. They didn't really feel good. In my first year, I tell everybody it was a blur. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about Bruno, and that's Bruno, okay? But as I got more into teaching and more into my niche and more into my space, I realized that youth voice and choice was about them being able to just truly like feel like they have a stake in this classroom and that they're being heard. Because oftentimes as adults, what we do is say like kids are supposed to be seen and not heard. And so I was doing things that were making them seen, allegedly, right? And not very much so heard. And they felt like they didn't really have a voice. And like, what does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with my community, Miss Simmons? Like, so I started doing more activities that kind of allowed them to talk about like their work and what they're passionate about, and helping them find that passion. I was in social studies, y'all, so I had a very fluid, like I wasn't like my end of year testing wasn't taken seriously. So I had a little bit more freedom to do that. And then in the after school program, we were really able to do that, right? Like I had my students create PSAs or public service announcements. I had them, do all these things. They were making their own sodas, and they were feeling like, wow, like, and I had community members come and talk to them about their sodas. And they were like, we didn't even know that the mayor was gonna be here. But then they felt heard, they felt seen. And so just doing those little small things, and it doesn't have to be as elaborate as a PSA. It doesn't have to be elaborate as somebody, a community member coming in. It could be just like you having a youth forum where they're talking about the issues that they see, right? Or you just getting a small round table and sitting down and saying like, what's the solution to this? How do we stop this? How do we start this? And so I think youth voice and choice can really vary based on your program, but it's super essential in making them feel like they matter. I'm a talker by nature, but I wasn't always like that. I didn't think people wanted to hear what I had to say. And now look at me like, I appreciate you all for coming out and seeing me. But yeah, so it matters.
Amazing. We did get a question from LaShonda. She said, if you're working with at-risk youth and kids who are struggling mentally, what would be your suggestion of incorporating medical professionals to do better serve the students?
I mean, I wouldn't steer away from it. I would find your local, it depends on what the mental struggle is, right? But I would partner with your local Department of Health and Human Services to find an organization that can help support that. Look, we aren't the experts on that, right? I'm not the expert on that. And so find the expert and have them see what the partnership could look like for them to come into your program. Obviously communicating with parents because they're going to be vital in this. My mom is somebody that doesn't believe in therapy, y'all. So you gotta make sure that the parent is on board too. You just can't have them come in your program and start use the word therapizing your students, right? You have to make sure that the parents are on board. So before you even start, like obviously talk to the program and then communicate with your parents that, hey, we might be interested in putting so-and-so in this program. How do you feel about that? Are you comfortable with that? And then if you could, if mom and dad are comfortable with said student being a participant of it, how can mom and dad then join in so that so it can be a family, an intergenerational model where your students are also being served. So find an organization that helps provide that first. And then check to see if the student is getting services already. Because it might just be, how do you guys fall into those services with the students? Sorry, Glenda. But yeah.
We are at 9 minutes until the top of the hour, so I still have some questions. My final questions were more on entrepreneurship, but I feel like we kind of covered some of that in the beginning, so I'll hold my questions. If anybody now would like to come off of mute, we've kind of already been having a conversation, but if anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question, please feel free to do so, and then we'll be more conversational the last few minutes together. Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We
Yes,
can.
hello.
Hi.
Oh,
Oh,
Let's do Kenitra first. Can we do that in that order? And then we can do Davina. Please correct my pronunciations when you come forward again if I got those wrong, but go ahead.
you absolutely got it right. And thank you so much. And I appreciate both of you for today. Just have a question for newer organizations, maybe less than 3 years, that may not have some of the data. Well, I wouldn't say data, but maybe financials that some of the grants are asking for. What would be your suggestions for an organization in that situation?
So if you're less than 3 years, you'll still have, for the year that you've been, whatever the number is, for the year that you've been in existence, you should still be filing your taxes and have the 990s that they're asking for. If you don't have that, or like an audit, I'm not an accountant, but my sister is. And we just did a webinar on, grants for profits, and we talked about not a 990, profit and loss statement. So you should be able to pull financials if you have them. If you don't, I would suggest sometimes whoever the grantor is, reaching out to them to see what they will accept. Because they may just accept like a letter from you explaining why you don't have a 990 or an audit, and things of that nature. So I would just suggest reaching out. Like, the best thing you can do is ask a question.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Davina? Or anyone else who would like to
Oh,
come forward? Oh,
yes.
there we go. You're good.
Sorry, trying to come off mute. Hello, everyone, and I'm grateful to all of you that put this webinar together. It's been very helpful. My question is, just as the young lady just mentioned, as a startup company, about 2 years in, we are multifaceted, passionate about a lot of things because, what I have endured and overcame myself as a youth, and then, grown into a woman. And so I'm here in this rural community, and that's my challenge. The mindsets are different regarding support, even though they say, yes, I'll help, but when it's time to step up to do those things, it's hard to find that, initial support. So I'm I'm in that place where I got to reach outside of my local community, and my issue is finding or not finding purchasing, building, whatever I have to do to give these children a place to go after school. We have a big issue in it's probably well globally, in our middle school and junior high um, schools, that vaping, let alone early sex and prevention. And also I heard someone say something regarding the mental health issues that stem sometimes from drug abuse within the home and trauma. So my question is there anyone that's on the live, on the webinar, that could kind of direct me to where I can get some sponsorships, some grants that can help me facilitate purchase a location, rent a location in this rural area where I live, because there's such a big need. In the cities, you have different opportunities, whether people use them or not, they're there. But here in the rural communities where the population may be 4,500, maybe 6,000, which ours is like 5,200. If there's nowhere for the kids to go. I substitute, I have a degree, associates, and I went back to college just to be informed about growth development, starting there. But there's such a larger problem with our middle school age students. So if anybody got some advice or direction, I would truly appreciate it. And again, thank you all so much for these webinars, because for those of us that really want to help but don't know how physically because of limitations of finances, so forth, it's a big help to us. So thank you and God bless you.
So I put in the chat box the USDA. They offer a lot of rural communities loans, whether it's a home loan or a building loan. Now, this is not my expertise, so I just thought about it as you were talking. I would also tell you, and I'll put this in the chat too. I know that Crystal says she used Grant Watch. I don't know if you pay for that, Crystal, but if you pay for that, stop paying for that. Because Get Ed Funding, let me put that, Get Ed Funding, is it .com? They do a grant watch as well for free. Yes, and I'll put that in the chat box. So if you're looking for sites, and then there is Goose Cafe, .org/funding, I believe. Let me make sure. Sorry, I'm putting these all, trying to put them all in the chat box for everybody. But that might be a way that you can find funding. And Boost specializes in after school programs. So I'm trying to get the link. Sorry guys. If you see me looking away. Oh my God, it's not copying. There we go. Here we go. This is the accurate link. Sorry guys. So Boost Cafe, and then another one that does it for free is the Candid P&D Bulletin. Give me a second. I'm on my work computer, so I don't have any of the files from my normal computer. This was taking so long, so I have to Google it. But they show RFPs in different areas. You can do a grant watch there. You can also look at like arts and culture. They look at community. And now, granted, these are all national databases, so don't feel like these are specific to Indiana. And I can send Chelsea some more places to look. And when she shares out the webinar, she can share all of this stuff with you guys too. But in terms of finding capital funds, I would also check with your local school boards, because sometimes they buy up buildings and those buildings sit vacant for years and they're not doing anything with them. So see what buildings they might have, and then you can go to the school board and make a pitch for like what renovation might look like, et cetera, et cetera. Another option, and I'm gonna try to be respectful of y'all time so I can finish start over. But another option may be checking with your city council to see what buildings the city owns, because if there might be an old abandoned supermarket, right, and that you want to change into your program, you need to know who owns it. So finding out who owns that land, who owns that space, seeing if you can get into a relationship with them where they can give it to you in kind. And in kind means that you're not paying any money, they're just giving this to you. They're essentially borrowing it. You're borrowing it from them, or you're just not getting any money for it. They're giving you this thing in kind because you have this organization and they support you. So reaching out, I would, if I were you, in terms of sponsorships, first I would send out letters of support. So something I do in my day job, as well as when I'm talking to people about grants, is we send out letters of support every time we're about to have a big event. So I send it out to BJ's. I don't know if you have a BJ's in your area, Costco's or Sam's Club, Walmart, Wegmans, Publix, any of those big grocery stores, and ask them to help sponsor or help just ask them like, what are ways that I can, like, we would love for you guys to donate, anything helps, blah, 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 insert ways that they can donate. And some of those are done online. So if there's an online application, that's where you need to do it. But like BJ's and Sam's, you can send out that letter, and once a year, they'll give you a gift card of X amount of dollars. Sometimes it's only $50, sometimes it's $250, but you can take it in there and go buy snacks for your students. You can also, in terms of your sponsorships, if I were you, I would sit down and think about your sponsorship packages, right? So do you want If somebody donates $500, what does that get them? Does that get them placement on your website? Does that get them placement on t-shirts? Or what does that afford them? Is it $500 one time, once a year, or is it $500 for the specific event? So sitting down and figuring out building out that package and to meet your needs. So I'm gonna stop talking. Sorry, but yes, all those things.
No, you have all of the resources in the world and it's awesome. Okay, for the room, I'm gonna wrap us up here. We will have this recording sent out to everyone who registered. So if you popped in, great. We will make sure that you get this within the next like 24 hours. And then we will also have some contact information for Sheneika. I'm for sure her and I will touch base after this to make sure we can include any extra links that were discussed right now, as well as just ways to connect with her in the future. Over in the chat, we do have 2 links I want to direct everyone towards. One is a sales link. We kind of opened the webinar, so if you missed it, with hearing a little bit about Afterschool HQ and what we are as a support tool to this after schools community, you can hear a little bit more about us in the beginning if you want to rewind that way. And then we also have a Facebook group where we have youth providers all over the country who say, hey, I have a question about this. How did you find a board member? Where's a grant at? So it's a communal space for providers if anybody wants to jump over there and continue asking questions or posing thoughts. But Sheneika, thank you so much for your time today. You are such a friend of Afterschool HQ. Can't wait to talk to you soon. And hopefully we'll see everyone on a webinar soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.